Hey, what's up, PlusUltra fam? Time for podcast number 14. Hashtag PlusUltra fam shoutouts to Sheridan Road, Terry B01, Netero SSJ, Chunin NT, Emmanuel Poor, Jordan Lyons, Metal, Thunder Panda, and White Blade. Today on the podcast, I'm going to try and finish up What If Yamcha Was a Saiyan, suggested by Zen Lucas Divers. For the sake of time constraints, we won't have a recap and I won't be too in depth with the story, but I will try and give as much detail as I can where I can. I do want to try and finish up as much of the timeline as I possibly can, but I also want to give you guys a little bit more detail because I've noticed a lot of you want that through the podcast, so I'm going to try and balance act this. We also want to have a recap, so if you feel like you need one, go back and watch podcast episode 12 to see part 1 and instant transmission here back afterwards. So we return to this story now. With the defeat of Piccolo Jr. by Son Goku, the world would enter a very nice time of peace, 5 years in fact. The only real situation of note here is that in his lifelong journey to not be shown up by Goku, Yamcha spends another year on Kami's lookout, doing more of the same training that Goku and the others had done in preparation for the fight with Piccolo Jr. I don't think this would be a problem, as Bulma is shown to be much more easygoing to Vegeta in canon about the time he spends training, unlike how Chi-Chi is with Goku, so I don't think this would be a huge problem on that front. She just allows Yamcha to have his little year of training, and if you think about it, she could just fly a jet up onto the lookout to spend time with him if she really wants to. Kami and Popo may not love this, but it's worth it as Yamcha is taking steps to get stronger and stronger and keep the planet safe. Piccolo would also be training harder than he did in canon, since he remembers how strong each of the Z Fighters were when they came to the 23rd tournament. But that's about it. All the other Z Fighters are pretty much training the exact same amount they were in canon, or just not at all. Now, as soon as Yamcha finishes that training, he flies directly to Mount Paozu and challenges Goku to another fight. The other fighter quickly accepts as he's pretty bored, and with this being so early in Goku and Chi-Chi's marriage, they still have the Oxykins money, so he doesn't really have to work, and Chi-Chi probably hasn't conceived Gohan yet, so I don't see it being a big problem for him to go off and have a little spar. The two fly off and go to find a secluded area to have their battle end where they won't disturb anybody, and as soon as they land there, the fight starts. Now, Goku and Yamcha would have already been stronger than in canon, and Goku would not have received a Zenkai from fighting Piccolo Jr. this timeline, because the fight would not have been as tough. So this means that Goku hasn't gotten significantly stronger from 1 year ago, while Yamcha has done some significant training. Now, because he's Goku and he's been born a Saiyan, I think it's possible that he might have a bit more potential than Yamcha. So let's say that Yamcha was able to push his power to 408, while Goku is currently at a 410. But they're nearly even with this. That 2 points of difference is so infinitesimal it's barely going to play into the fight. So after powering up and sizing each other up, the two go at it and pull out literally every stop. The after image technique, the spirit ball, the solar flare, the Wolf Fang Fist versus Goku's rock scissors paper combo, the two even use their tails against each other. In one of the usual breaks in combat for dialogue, we see Yamcha, and usual shonen style, explain to Goku that he planned for this battle to happen on this specific night for one reason, just to take on Goku on all fronts. At that point, the sun had finally set, but the battlefield was still illuminated by the light of a full moon. Remember, at this point in this timeline, both Saiyans have kept their tails and have learned to perfectly control the Great Ape forms. So the two smirk at each other and begin to grow in power and size before becoming great apes and duking it out on that front. Now with their powers 10 times stronger, if they hadn't yet, the other warriors of Earth were now able to feel the incredible energy of this battle. Piccolo is just too curious and decides to go and investigate the source. He comes upon the sight of Goku and Yamcha shaking the ground with the force of their punches and kicks as great apes. This was insane. And worse, he now had two insanely strong foes he'd have to defeat to take over the world. He watches the battle as it continues, contemplating and strategizing of different ways to maybe take the great apes down, or maybe find a way to pit them against each other. He has to find something he can do. After a bit longer, Goku and Yamcha clash one last time, and they slug each other just right that they end up knocking each other out and making this battle a draw. Piccolo sees this and considers going to take them out now while they're exhausted and probably unconscious, but that just wasn't his style. Nothing in this timeline has really happened to change his personality or his morals. He flies off and throws himself into much tougher training than what he was already doing beforehand. We can now skip another 4 years before anything else significant really happens. One of these things being that Goku and Chi-Chi have a son lovingly named Gohan, and after this, Yamcha and Bulma have a son which is named Trunks. Remember that Bulma probably had the most say in what Trunks' name was. Now, he'd probably be a lot like the canon kid Trunks, though I'd say his cockiness is much more dialed up in this timeline since he's Yamcha's son, and when Yamcha was a lot younger, he had a bit of cockiness to him. Not to mention, this version of Trunks would still have a lot of money and brains and power on top of that, so that kinda does that to you and just inflates your ego. And Yamcha probably sees no reason not to train the kid a little, realizing that he has a lot of potential and just wanted to share something with his son that he really can't with his mom. Bulma doesn't really do martial arts, and Yamcha really doesn't do technology and smart type stuff, so this is what he and Trunks can really share as a father and a son. I could also maybe see Yamcha regaling Kid Trunks with a lot of the stories of his and his friend's youth, and maybe Trunks, learning about Piccolo Jr. and being like, I'll be the one to defeat him, blah blah blah, I'm cocky. But we finally skip to age 761 and a third Saiyan lands on the planet. He activates his scouter and zeroes in on the largest power on the planet currently. This might not be the best impression. 513! Not bad, Kakarot! But this planet is still crawling with humans! He blasts off towards who he assumes to be his brother, but finds a green creature. This goes a lot in canon, but Piccolo is getting really sick of all these monkey-tailed humans. He fires off a blast that actually cracks and breaks a portion of Raditz's armor. The long-haired Saiyan is about to do away with this pest, but his scouter beeps again and he zeroes in on two very large power levels, smaller than this one but still pretty large. As all great villains would, he decides to leave this opponent in front of him alive even though he could easily pose a threat later on and he is in a position to kill him very easily. Great thinking, Raditz. Meanwhile, at Kame House, the reunion was in full swing and Gohan and Trunks are getting acquainted with each other. They're pretty much polar opposites because Trunks is pretty confident and Gohan is still kinda shy, but Trunks is really surprised at how smart Gohan is, even though he's being raised in the mountains and he's not really heard too much that was about Goku's intelligence. The festivities are interrupted though when the adults sense something coming and begin freaking out. Raditz lands and begins his monologue, sans the part where he berates Goku for losing his tail since he still has it here. This also brings up the question of who the hell Yamcha was. No one told him another low class was sent here to this dirtball of planet. Now everyone is really confused. This causes Raditz to go into his monologue into what Saiyans are, and Bulma puts 2 and 2 together and comes up with 22 and tells Yamcha that he is an alien like Goku now because of the wish he made on the Dragon Balls. This means the Dragon Balls are mentioned extremely early, and 2 eavesdroppers decide this deserves some more investigation and decide to set off towards planet Earth right now. Back on Earth, the shock of these revelations are doubled as Goku and Yamcha are pretty much going through them. Raditz bats this question out of the conversation and tells Kakarot and, what was the other guy's name? Yumoshi? Whatever it was. They'd both be coming with him to help him, Vegeta, and Nappa in conquering a planet. Once they refuse, you get the whole bring 100 dead human beings to this beach tomorrow, blah blah blah, flying me to the stomach, I'm taking your kids. This pretty much happens the exact same as in canon. Trunks has done some training, but I don't even think he'd be in the low hundreds yet. He tries to kick Raditz, but he's easily knocked out along with Gohan. Once those 2 are taken, Piccolo arrives and offers the same deal that he would do to Goku to both of the Saiyans. Goku is about as willing to team up as he was in canon, while Yamcha is flat out refusing. Bulma logically steps in to explain that right now, getting their sons back was top priority, and so Yamcha decides to cooperate. Also, here's a fun tidbit. Since Yamcha can't use the Nimbus, he would either have to learn to fly very, very well, or he'd have to use one of Bulma's jets. She likely has another one on her since she's pretty much the head of Capsule Corp, so let's say he does that to save on energy. The trio arrive to the plains and challenge Raditz to a proper 3-on-1 fight, and take off their weighted training gear. Piccolo is really and truly the strongest at the level of 570, and explains that after watching Goku and Yamcha battle it out a few years ago, he trained a lot harder than he was already planning to, and made very good use of weighted training gear. Goku is around a 487 after his fight with Yamcha and a bit more training, while Yamcha has actually overtaken him at a level of 506. Now with the addition of this strong Yamcha, Raditz will definitely have a lot of trouble in this fight. I can imagine dealing with just the Spirit Ball, even if it isn't a powerful move, is going to be extremely annoying and distracting. Like Goku and Piccolo could go in for an attack that Raditz is ready to counter, but then the Sokidan just hits him in the head, making him look away and take a big hit from both of them. Also, get ready, because I'm probably going to be using the Spirit Ball a lot in this timeline, just because I feel like it's one of Yamcha's most underutilized moves, and I think it's a really cool move that has a lot of potential. Though he is outnumbered, Raditz is far and away stronger than all three of them combined, so he can tank their hits and deliver bigger attacks. The same tactic of doing the pincer attack with the Kamehameha and Special Beam Cannon combo is still thought of, but this time Raditz has much more to dodge than just one attack or two. And beyond that, with Piccolo training to take down two opponents instead of one, I don't think he would have thought of the Special Beam Cannon in this timeline. Or at least he would have tried to improve the technique and make it a much more quick attack to charge. But for the task of taking out two opponents, Piccolo has thought of a move that covers the battlefield in Ki Blast before allowing them to all come down in one large blast, the Hellzone Grenade. I know Piccolo never used it against multiple opponents, like he kind of should have done this against Android 17 and 18, and if he did, maybe something with Cell could have been avoided. Just saying, it could have been a really good attack for dealing with multiple opponents, and that's what I'm proposing it to be used as here, instead of just the Special Beam Cannon, which was still pretty impractical just for one opponent. I don't mean to ramble and talk so fast, I just really love talking about Dragon Ball Z attacks. Now, like in canon, Goku and Yamcha using Super Kamehamehas and Piccolo trying the Hellzone Grenade doesn't really get Raditz. He sidesteps the Kamehamehas and takes a few hits from the Hellzone Grenades, but the attack just isn't potent enough to kill him or damage him too badly. He's got a few bruises, burns, and bumps, but nothing that's going to take him out of the fight permanently. We'll say that Piccolo still loses an arm, and during the distraction, Goku is actually able to grab a hold of Raditz's tail. Raditz still convinces his brother to let him go and begins torturing him in front of Gohan, who has been trapped with Trunks inside of one of the Saiyan pods that Raditz landed with, and they're watching this. This moment of rage allows him to get a rage boost where he just can't control himself, and he escapes his confinements, shocking everyone, including Trunks, and going in to headbutt Raditz directly in the solar plexus. Now, Raditz has already taken some damage, and remember that I said that Piccolo's initial attack when he first met Raditz did a lot of damage and cracked his space armor, so this headbutt should do a lot more damage and probably debilitate Raditz to the point of only being able to move a bit. Not taking any chances with the life of his son or his friends, Yamcha appears behind the long-haired Saiyan and grabs onto his tail. He then kicks the injured Goku out of the way and tells Gohan to get away and protect his dad. He then yells out to Piccolo to try the same attack, but this time put everything he has into it. Piccolo smirks as he doesn't have to be told twice, especially since this will give him a chance to take out one of his enemies. The Ki Blasts he produces this time are much larger than the ones from the first time, almost to the point where it looks like dozens upon dozens of suns are in the sky. Piccolo then brings them all down with the duo of Saiyans, and this causes a massive explosion. The attack takes almost everything out of Piccolo, and he can just barely stand up right now. When the dust settles, Raditz and Yamcha are on the ground with multiple burns and scars from the massive attack. They're both dying, and Trunks runs up to his dad, crying as he realizes what's happening. I'll explain why he doesn't get a rage boost in a little bit. Bulma and the others arrive in another jet just in time, and there's a very sad goodbye for the former bandit as his body disappears. Goku, while holding Gohan, actually gets to have a final dialogue with Raditz where he learns about two more Saiyans far stronger than Raditz on their way to the planet right now. Piccolo is exhausted, but he stands up, notably without putting on his weights, as he probably can't move with them on right now. He tells Goku that he needs to give him his son so they can train the kid and make him as strong as possible. Trunks, hearing this, gets even sadder that his dad has died, and now the guy that killed him is trying to take his new friend away from him. He was angry, yes, but his sadness was much more palatable. But with the massive power boost coming from the sadness instead of the anger, he actually rushes Piccolo and begins to attack the weakened Namekian. This is actually an attack that is able to knock the weakened Namekian out before Goku finally steps in and hits Trunks' pressure point, knocking him out as well. I don't think that this version of Trunks should receive rage boosts. I know it's likely that all Saiyans can pretty much be capable of rage boosts since we've pretty much seen them all display one or more or something very, very akin to them. But number one, I feel like Yamcha, even more than Goku, has a very low capacity for rage, especially as he grows up and assumes his cocky, almost surfer bro persona, and that can kind of be passed down to Trunks as they grow up, or as he grows up under Yamcha's wing. And number two, I don't want Trunks to be a copy of Gohan for now, since they're both going to be child hybrid Saiyans at this point in the arc. So for now, he doesn't have rage boosts, he has sadness boosts. Goku is pretty amazed by the power that Gohan and Trunks have showed today and begins begging Bulma to allow him to train Trunks along with Gohan and Piccolo. They may have been their only hope, even though Yamcha would be trained in Otherworld. You never knew. Bulma sighs and decides that as long as she can monitor Trunks' training and make sure he's okay, she'll allow it. So Goku picks up Piccolo over his shoulder and puts Gohan and Trunks on the Nimbus before flying off to Mount Paozu to explain the situation to his wife. She's much more willing to let training happen since Goku will be leading it and since Bulma will be supervising it, but she wants Goku to keep Piccolo away from the kids. Much more accepting is kind of like a 4 for Chi-Chi. She's not like saying, yeah, I want this to happen. She's more like, fine, this is okay. So the quartet go out into the wilderness away from Mount Paozu, and Goku tells the boys what they'll be doing for the next year. Piccolo makes his suggestion about leaving them alone for a bit to toughen them up, and Goku doesn't exactly hate the idea. It's kind of what he had to do when Grandpa Gohan died. He had to survive for himself, get used to nature, and being his own man. That said, he decides that 3 months would be better than 6 months. That's just way too much time for the boys to be on their own, and he's thinking that with Trunks and Gohan starting to become friends and they're already pretty smart, and Trunks already being kind of confident and probably going to rub that off on Gohan at some point, they'll probably be pretty acclimated to the wilderness and just survival pretty soon, so 3 months should be pretty good for them. So before leaving, Goku tells the boys to try and take care of each other and teach each other all that they really know to help their odds of survival. Meanwhile, he and Piccolo will be training together and they'll be trying to do as much as they can on their own in those 3 months. In Otherworld, Yamcha starts his way down Snake Way. His training with King Kai won't be extremely different from Goku's, but where it does differ I will get to a bit later. On Earth, Kami calls the stronger Z-Fighters to his lookout and has them do even more training there. Remember that all the Z-Fighters have indeed trained with Kami already in this timeline, meaning his training won't be too beneficial to them unless they add something onto that, which I believe logically would be the Room of Spirit and Time. They're all definitely stronger than Goku was when he was a kid and he spent a few months in there, and they could go in pairs and keep each other pretty much sane in there, so it's definitely a viable option. That said, it's the most logical move for them to make, but this story really isn't about the humans, so we'll take a different route and say they do the same training they do in canon, but just get stronger from it. It's just one of those things in a what-if scenario where you have an A and a B route, with one being more logical and more likely, but you just don't go down at that time. On their end, Goku and Piccolo make a lot of use out of Piccolo's clothes beam attack to keep making heavier and heavier training weights for the pair to use during their sparring and training. They even make some clothes for the boys, meaning we get to see Kid Gohan and Kid Trunks in matching Turtle Skull outfits, which is a manga cover I would love to see in the old style. Now, putting it bluntly, this training between Goku and Piccolo would be some really good training. They are both highly motivated and using training weights and sparring together, which is always shown to net better gains than one could do training by themselves. Remember, Piccolo took 6 months of his 1 year of training to just train by himself, and then he had Gohan, who he had to end up teaching a lot of basics to. So Piccolo should likely get a lot stronger than he was in canon just from this first 3 months of training. Goku is slowly having the same effect that Gohan had on Piccolo in canon, while the boys are starting to get better and do more like what Gohan did in canon as well, and get more accustomed to the wilderness. If he was canon, I would love to see the whole thing with the robot that Gohan meets in the cave system still happen, and maybe Trunks is smart enough or just knows Capsule Corp technology enough to help the robot be able to move again. That'd be one really cool filler-only moment that we could see in this type of timeline if Toei did an animation for it. But after 3 months, Goku and Piccolo return stronger than they were in canon and much stronger than they were beforehand, and see that the boys have also gotten stronger, closer as friends, and more confident on the part of Gohan, and a bit more humble on the part of Trunks. For this relationship dynamic, Trunks and Gohan have formed a friendship like Trunks and Goten have if Goten was older or maybe the same age as Trunks, and the power dynamic was more even. There isn't really that whole boss and lackey type of deal they have. It's pretty much like they're both really good best friends and they just get along. And now when the next 9 months of training really get going, Goku focuses a lot of his attention on Gohan and his development. This is his son, and he was the most impressed with his own power, so he really wants to cultivate that and see how strong he can get Gohan to become. Trunks is with Piccolo by default. They alternate this type of training dynamic, but not a ton. This forces Trunks to slowly but surely lose his grudge against Piccolo, as he sees the good in him that is also starting to come out more since he's around Gohan, Goku, and Trunks, which is 3 positive influences. Trunks is also kind of influenced by Piccolo in gaining another trait that he also kind of seems to share with his father, and that is unique ki attacks. Trunks develops his own style for the Spirit Bomb, but also mixes it with his own style for the Hellzone Grenade. He can't do this with a ton of attacks at once, but it makes him a dangerous puppet master in battle. Goku makes sure to stress teaching the boys all the basics that he was taught as a kid, breaking the superhuman limit, going and being able to move without ringing a bell. All those lessons he was taught as a kid, he wants to make sure those two are taught. He also stresses teaching them to control the Grade 8 form, as he likely doesn't want them to have to lose their tails, since Goku and Yamcha didn't lose their tails. It's kind of like a tradition at this point. Goku and Piccolo also keep up their sparring, but neither of them are really learning anything new, unlike Yamcha is on King Kai's. He is currently struggling with the ki-based attacks he's trying to learn. The Kaioken is coming a bit easier than the Spirit Bomb is. I also hope that the joke that Yamcha tells King Kai would be different from the one that he tells him in the filler where you see them on King Kai's. Was that moment filler or not? I have to check that later on. Those last 9 months of training pass by and the Saiyans arrive on Earth much earlier than they did in canon due to leaving for Earth much earlier. King Kai tells us to Yamcha and explains that his calculations are way off, and the other Saiyan begins racing down Snake Way. The Z Fighters gather, and from weakest to strongest we have Chaozu at 700, Yajirobe at 970, but he's nowhere to be seen. Next is Krillin at 1986, Gohan at 2010, Tenshinhan at 2130, Trunks at 2300, Piccolo at 4800, and Goku at 5500. Oh, Goku, Piccolo, Gohan, and Trunks are also weighted, and you guys have no idea how many takes that was to get that in one go. The Saiyans arriving on the battlefield and planting the Cybermen will go pretty much the same as in canon, though we don't lose any people to them. The Cybermen are all pretty much too weak to fight any of the Z Fighters at this point, other than Chaozu or maybe Yajirobe if he was on the battlefield right now. Vegeta reads Goku's power level at 5500, and this shocks and angers Nappa, as this youngster was already more powerful than he was, and he was a low-class Saiyan only 1 year ago. Goku takes off his weighted training gear just as Nappa tries to power up to his full power, along with Piccolo and the boys, and their powers grow by about 35% instead of the usual increase because of their use of heavier weights in this timeline. Don't quote me on that number. I'm not sure how big the increases were from the weights. I think like 27 or 28% was how much it was from Piccolo taking off his weights against Raditz. I gotta do all that math again, and it's just not really what I want to do right now. Getting back on track, that increase brings Goku to about a 7,400, and that is not too far below Nappa's full unadulterated power. So the two Saiyans begin to clash and duke it out at a pretty even pace. Vegeta is extremely surprised that his power was even that high. From a low class to a middle class in a year is a pretty insane jump to him. He isn't as mad as he is in canon where he breaks his scouter, but he's still pretty aggravated but decides to watch the fight. So he tells Nappa to end the fight with Kakarot quick and sits back to watch the battle. The other Earthlings are too weak for him to waste his time on, and Piccolo can sense this, but he begins to come up with a plan. Nappa is the tiniest bit stronger than Goku in terms of pure power, but Goku is a better martial artist, and so he's beating Nappa, who is pretty much just a brute of a brawler. Meanwhile, Piccolo's plan is sprung as Goku and Nappa's battle goes airborne. Vegeta looks up and is distracted. Tien then calls to get his attention, and when he looks down, Tien uses the solar flare. As soon as Vegeta can't see anymore, the Z Fighters unleash a hellish assault of Ki Blast right into Vegeta's face. When the dust settles, Vegeta's scouter and armor are pretty damaged, but he doesn't have any real notable injuries, and he's more pissed off than anything. He rushes the group and instantly starts taking people out. Chaozu is killed by a single punch to the face, and Tien is blown back by a quick slap. Krillin falls to a similar fate as Goro does in canon, while Piccolo wraps his arms around Gohan and Trunks and leaps away to get them out of danger, with Tien alive but basically unconscious, and Piccolo obviously not wanting to fight anymore. And besides, in canon, Vegeta doesn't want to kill Piccolo or want Nappa to kill Piccolo, so he backs off for a bit, but not before he hits the unconscious Tien with a Ki Blast that also takes his life. Trunks gets riled up and shakes out of Piccolo's grasp to go and tank on Vegeta, while Gohan, witnessing all of his death at once, is scared again. But everyone senses Yamcha returning to the world of the living and on his way to the battlefield currently. Vegeta's scouter has been destroyed, and Nappa's scouter has been destroyed by his fight with Goku. Speaking of the Big Saiyan, he is finally knocked out when Goku realizes what's happening to his friends, and he sees that Trunks is rushing Vegeta, with Piccolo coming after him. This starts a brand new squabble with multiple stakes in it. Vegeta doesn't care a ton about Goku or Trunks' life, but he can't kill Piccolo, while Goku and Piccolo are pretty aware they can't beat Vegeta, but just want to keep Trunks safe and keep Piccolo safe. So there's going to be a lot of dodging and swinging of Trunks around to get him out of the way, who he just isn't listening, and the adults are trying to get him to run away, while Vegeta is trying to not really kill Piccolo or, hurt him that bad. Finally, Vegeta is able to land a knockout hit on Piccolo that puts him on the ground. He then sends Goku flying with a kick, and as he is sent careening away, Goku calls out to the Nimbus and has it fly in and scoop up Gohan and Trunks, essentially carrying Trunks away against his will. Vegeta growls in exasperation and approaches Goku, who is still trying to get up and recover somewhat. But then a familiar voice rings out as Yamcha arrives onto the battlefield finally and yells out Kaioken. He rams into Vegeta, and with the prince being only a bit tired and somewhat damaged, it is not extremely significant, but he's still somewhat tired, so they're pretty much even with the Kaioken. I'll say that Yamcha, after training with King Kai, is able to get close to how strong Goku did with his King Kai training. He's almost an 8,000, or he's at an 8,000 even, not over it. Initially, the fight goes very similar to how Goku and Vegeta's fight does, but Yamcha may have developed the quick and dangerous attacks of the Wolf Fang Fist to be a more conscious style of fighting. You can maybe call it Wolf Fang Fist Concert or something. This combined with the Kaioken pushes Vegeta to a really, desperate degree, and he ends up deciding to use the Gallic Gun a lot earlier than he does in canon. Yamcha considers using the Kaioken and Kamehameha, but he doesn't want to exhaust himself, and King Kai has always stressed that you shouldn't take it over a ×3. So instead, he decides on something different. Even though he isn't too good at it, he begins absorbing a small amount of energy from all the living things on Earth that he can. He does this until it seems like Vegeta is going to let the attack fly, and he then releases his attack and calls out Spirit Ball Bomb. He is able to direct the Spirit Bomb with his fingers, and the orb of energy is still pretty small and dense and potent, even though it's not a fully charged Spirit Bomb. He makes it cut through and destroy Vegeta's beam before making an impact with Vegeta himself, and the result is the same as in canon, but this Spirit Bomb is very weak compared to the one that actually defeats Vegeta in canon. Vegeta is blasted up into the sky, and he roars, feeling embarrassed as he looks for the moon and is unable to find it. Though all the Z fighters who are Saiyans can control their grade 8 forms, Piccolo had reason that it was smart to not allow the enemy to make use of the moon, especially if they were already stronger. You basically just end up with the same fight, just now with giant monkeys who could harm your own allies. It wasn't really a good tactic. So Vegeta returns to the ground and creates a power ball, which is an attack or a technique that Yamcha really pays attention to, but he can't really take note of it just yet. So Vegeta, Yamcha, and the still recovering Goku transform into great apes. Yamcha and Goku are still weaker than even a tired Vegeta, but the three beasts begin to duke it out, even though they're all pretty exhausted and beat up at this point. Gohan and Trunks argue about whether or not they should go back to the fight, but once feeling the power levels grow from the Great Ape transformation, they can't help themselves. They return and not understand what the Power Ball is, they look up at it and accidentally change into Great Apes. Their control isn't as perfect as their father's, but they can definitely aim themselves and distinguish from friend or foe. So now Vegeta had to deal with these two whelps on top of Yamcha and Goku, and he was already pretty tired and already pretty pissed off. He ends up grabbing both younger Great Apes. Also, here's a pretty fun thing in this moment. We would get to see or compare the heights of different Great Apes. Like Yamcha and Goku should technically be the tallest since they're taller than Vegeta, Gohan, and Trunks in base form. Now they've just grown, so that'd be a pretty cool thing. I don't think we've ever been able to compare how tall two Great Apes are compared to each other. In canon, I know the Bardock movie shows, but you don't really get to see him. I'm rambling on, I'm sorry. When finally seeing an opportunity, Vegeta grabs both children by their tails and is able to swing them around with enough force to lift them off the ground before their tails are actually ripped out. They slam into their fathers and they all fall down as Gohan and Trunks transform back into their base forms. That's so weird. Whenever you say Goten and you just naturally want to say Trunks, it's kind of like saying peanut butter and, like you want to say jelly. Gohan and Trunks refuse to go out of the fight just yet and begin trying to pester and annoy Vegeta. Piccolo sits up and waits for an opportunity where Vegeta's back will be to him. Once this happens, he shoots out his hand and tries to get a ki blast to fire off Vegeta's tail. This doesn't work and Vegeta actually avoids it. He then feels his tail flop to the ground anyway as a mysterious portly samurai scuttles away behind a rock. Tailless, exhausted, beaten, and outgunned, Vegeta looks up to Yamcha and Goku still in their Great Ape forms with their arms crossed, and their sons, tiny in comparison to them, standing on top of their heads while Trunks supports the tired Piccolo. Their message was clear: get the Hiffle off their planet, take the big bald guy with you, and don't ever come back or you're gonna die. Barely able to move, Vegeta reluctantly calls down his and Nappa's pods and vows to come back one day as a Super Saiyan and kill them all. He then blasts off back into space. The aftermath of the battle isn't really that sad either, because if you remember in the King Piccolo saga, neither Krillin or Chaozu have died before. So the Dragon Balls can pretty much be used to solve all their issues, and this actually presents a problem for the Namekians. If Krillin is dead, then he doesn't have his idea about Namek. Though someone else could have that same idea, but with the Dragon Ball still active because Piccolo is still alive, there is no reason to even think about that. I don't think King Kai would have checked up on the Namekians if no one mentioned it, and if Piccolo and Kami have never come into contact with any other Namekians, then they probably couldn't have telepathic contact with him either. So Namek's only real hope is getting in contact with King Kai, and if they do that, his best team is going to take 6 months to actually get to the planet. So after 6 months, Nappa and Vegeta collect the Dragon Balls on planet Namek after being told by Kui, and this pisses Frieza off. No one finds all 7 until someone goes and finds Guru. The Ginyu Force are called in, and Nappa and Vegeta would likely die to them. Their only real hope would be if Guru senses that Vegeta is less evil or has less blood on his hands than Frieza does, and calls him and Nappa to his home to unlock their hidden potential. But with the blood on both Frieza and Vegeta's hands being Namekian, I don't see this happening. So the Dragon Balls are collected by Frieza, everyone refused to give him the password, and Guru dies of sadness at some point, making the balls inert. Frieza gets angry and destroys the planet, thinking this was a waste of time, so he won't be going after the Earth Dragon Balls either. Again, I could go a completely different route just to do the Namek saga, but I don't think you really need one this timeline. I think from here the story should go pretty much directly to the Android saga, as Yamcha has made some pretty big changes to the timeline. But I'm going to leave the story here for now. I feel like this is a decent enough drop-off point, and the next Dragon Ball scenario we will do will be a different one, to be fair to all of you. So be sure to make your own suggestions using hashtag #PlusUltraFam with the correct spelling, because spelling does count. Thank you guys for watching. I know this one may be a bit more rambly and unorganized. I'm trying to avoid that with these. I'm getting a little tired and a little overwhelmed with my schoolwork right now, so please bear with me. I know the podcast is supposed to be a bit more laid back, but in recent times I've been trying to make it a little bit more professional, a little more, sit back and enjoy the story without all the stammering and stuff. I'll try and get back to that as soon as possible. I also did want to get through this story as quick as possible. I probably will be leaving it here for now. Also, shout out to all the patrons, and especially to my friend Ox Nagadaba for sending over some gameplay for this episode that actually correlates to what's actually going on screen and on the story with a Saiyan version of Yamcha. Also, he is a Twitch streamer, and you guys may start seeing me in his streams because he's a pretty cool guy. So I'll leave a link in the description, so definitely come check him out the next time he's streaming. You might see me there. That's about it, so I will go ahead and leave you guys with my saying of always take care of yourselves, and as always, go beyond plus ultra. See you guys next time.